Here we go. All right, let me share my screen and we will begin our program. All right, so I'd like to turn it over to Jeff Nathan, our president of Shalom Aleichem, for welcoming.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Passover celebration. This, as we've mentioned, is not going to be a Seder. We had one last night. You may have another one tonight. Well, we're going to talk a lot about what Passover is all about. This is a number long of new online Shalom Aleichem events. We have another one in April. We have another one in May. We're hoping to have some over the summer. One way or another, we'll have High Holy Day, something or other in the early fall. You're welcome to come to these. We're about to send out a membership drive notification. So if you haven't joined, you're most welcome to join. If you have joined, you're most welcome to re-up. We've changed the fee structure so it's more affordable. And you'll be hearing more about that in the near future. And beyond that, I will be quiet so we can get started.
That's good job. The season of liberation. The ways of observing Passover have been many. The languages used have been diverse. The garments have varied. Circumstances have been surprising as history, but one idea in the festival has remained unchanging, that it is a celebration of freedom. In the Jewish tradition, Pesach is known as the season of liberation, Zman Chehutenu. In song, in myth, in literature, in history, the Jews have associated Pesach with liberation, liberation from winter, from bondage, from oppression. Shalom Aleichem touched the pagan layer of intoxication with nature and spring that probably lies at the misty beginnings of this festival.
So we're next going to have a really beautiful Yiddish poem, and I'm going to make sure that Shirley is unmuted. I think she's muted right now. And Shirley Benyas is going to favor us with some beautiful Yiddish. I think she's getting unmuted. Just a second. Let's see.
Will you unmute me?
There we go. You're unmuted now.
Okay. Gekommen der liebe Gott Jontef Pesach. In Dreisen ist gut, in Dreisen ist wohl. Die Sonne haut schon weit in Himmel. Guckt schon herab auf jener Seite Stadt. Es ist breit und gram und weich und frei, arum und arum. Erteweis schlagt sich durch von Berg, was auf jener Seite schwul. A Gräsele, a Grins, a Frisch, a Tappeldix, mit a Quitsch und mit a Zwitz, flieht durch über unsere Cap a Gleichschnittel von kleinen Schwelbelach. Und wieder der Modach mich in dem Shir HaShirim von Cheder.
The wonderful time, the most joyous time of the year has come. The sun is high in the sky. The air is free and fresh, soft and clear. On the hill are the first sprouts of spring grass, tender, quivering green. With a screech and a flutter of wings, a straight line of swallows flies overhead. And I'm reminded of the Song of Songs. For lo, the winter is past, the rain is over and gone. Flowers appear on the earth. The time of singing is come.
Erev Pesach. You need to turn the volume down.
trying to recreate an
All right,
air
folks, we're using
siren,
two
Jeff.
computers simultaneously and they don't like it.
That's okay. You were just trying to
Erev
recreate
Pesach,
an air raid
1943.
siren.
The Battle of the Warsaw Ghetto started on the first night of Pesach. For 28 shattering days, a handful of men, women, and children pitted their fragility against the mass might of the Nazi war machine. Although the flames have long been extinguished, the embers still smolder. For pharaohs come and pharaohs go, the Sennacheribs, the Belshazzars, the Hamans, but the freedom fighters of the ghetto will live forever, fiery testimony to their love of liberty, kindled by the Exodus.
Pavel Friedman was a young poet who lived in the Theresienstadt ghetto. Little is known of the author, but he is presumed to have been 17 years old when he wrote The Butterfly. The poem, dated June 4th, 1942, was found amongst a hidden cache of children's work recovered at the end of World War II. Pavel was deported to Auschwitz, where he died on September 29th, 1944.
Its tears would sing against the white stone. Such a yellow is carried lightly way up high. It went away, I'm sure, because it wished to kiss the world goodbye. For 7 weeks, I've lived in here, penned up inside the ghetto. But I have found my people here. The dandelions call to me and the white chestnut candles in the court. Only I never saw another butterfly. That butterfly was the last one. Butterflies don't live in here, in the ghetto.
And a description by Tuvia Borzikovsky, Between Tumbling Walls. Seder in the Warsaw Ghetto, 1943. Amidst this destruction, the table in the center of the room looked incongruous, with glasses filled with wine, with the family seated around, the rabbi reading the Haggadah. His reading was punctuated by explosions and the rattling of machine guns. The faces of the family around the table were lit by the red light from the burning buildings nearby. Once more, the covenant people had kept the faith.
I tried to find an accompaniment. For this and failed, so I'm going to have to do this a cappella, or as Shirley likes to say, a cappella. Sag nit kein Mal aus, du gehst dem letzten Weg, wenn Himmeln bleierne verstellen bläue Tag. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebinkte Schau, das Wetter beugt und unser Trott mir seinen da. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebinkte Schau, das Wetter beugt und unser Trott mir seinen da. Von grünen Palmenland bis weißen Land von Schnee, wir kommen an mit unser Pein, mit unser Weh. Und wo gefallen ist das Spritz von unser Blut, sprotzen Wett und unser Gwore, unser Mut. Und wo gefallen ist das Spritz von unser Blut, spritzen Wett und unser Gwore, unser Mut. Doch sagt nicht kein Mal aus, du gehst dem letzten Weg, wenn Himmeln bleien, verstellen bläue Tag. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebinkte Schau, das Wetter beugt und unser Trott mir seinen da. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebinkte Schau, das Wetter beugt und unser Trott mir seinen da.
Thank you, Jeff. That was beautiful. Hold on one second. It flipped twice. There we go. There we are. All right, I'd like to introduce David Mendelberg, who actually is the artist of the sculpture you're looking at. It's a beautiful wood carving of Moses, and he is going to read this slide for us. Sure, he is unmuted.
Okay. On this holiday of liberation, what do these words mean? We are slaves because yesterday our people were in slavery, and memory makes yesterday real for us. We are slaves because today there are still people in chains around the world, and no one can be truly free while others are in chains. We are slaves because freedom means more than broken chains. Where there is poverty and hunger and homelessness, there is no freedom. Where there is prejudice and bigotry and discrimination, there is no freedom. Where there is violence and torture and war, there is no freedom. And while each of us is less than he or she might be, we are not free, not yet. And who this year can be deaf to the continuing oppression of the downtrodden? Who can be blind to the burdens and the rigors that are now to be added to the most vulnerable in our midst? If these things be so, who among us can say that he or she is free?
Thank you, David. Dayenu, it would have been sufficient. Dayenu, Dayenu. It would have been enough, says the Haggadah, had God helped us 40 years in the desert and not fed us manna. It would have been sufficient. Had God fed us manna and not given us the Torah, it would have been sufficient. Had God given us Torah and not brought us into the land of Israel, it would have been sufficient.
Elu hotianu mi Mitzrayim, hotianu mi Mitzrayim, Dayenu. Wollt kein Moshe nicht gewesen, wollt kein Freiheit nicht gewesen, wollt kein Teure nicht gewesen, Dayenu. Wollt kein Teure nicht gewesen, wollt kein Pesach nicht gewesen, wollt kein Seder nicht gewesen, Dayenu. Dayenu, Dayenu, Dayenu.
Thank you, Shirley. I'd now like to invite all of you to join me in the Hebrew of Dayenu. Ilu hotzianu mi Mitzrayim, hotzianu mi Mitzrayim, Dayenu. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. Ilu natalanu et hashabat, natalanu et hashabat, Dayenu. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. Ilu natalanu et haTorah, natalanu et haTorah, Dayenu. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu.
But today, we're forced to grapple with a world that is full of insufficiencies. That is not full of sufficiencies, but of insufficiencies. If we would promote Jewish unity in our community, within our congregations, within our homes,
Dayenu.
if we would agree to disagree with other Jews on issues, but without rancor, hostility, bitterness, or malice.
Dayenu.
If we would speak up when others use derogatory terms for co-religionists who are more or less observant than we.
Dayenu.
If we would reach out to Jews of all backgrounds to work together toward common goals in an atmosphere of respect.
Dayenu.
Dayenu.
If we were to end a single genocide, but not stop the other wars that are killing men and women as we sit here,
it would not be sufficient.
If we were to end those bloody wars, but not disarm the nations of the weapons that could destroy all of mankind,
it would not be sufficient.
If we were to disarm the nations, but not end the pollution and poisoning of our planet,
it would not be sufficient.
If we were to end the poisoning of the planet, but not prevent other people from wallowing in luxury while others starved,
it would not be sufficient.
If we were to make sure that no one starved, but not end police brutality in many countries,
it would not be sufficient.
If we were to end police brutality, but not free the daring poets from their jails,
it would not be sufficient.
If we were to free the poets from their jails, but cramp the minds of the people so that they could not understand the poets,
it would not be sufficient.
Road to freedom. In light of the saga of Hebrew liberation, it is not surprising that the enslaved Black people in the United States, who had been taught scripture, made of this story not only a symbolic song of their own freedom struggle, but an actual signal that helped the organization of their flight north to freedom. The slave owner heard only the familiar Bible story of the Exodus. The Black slave sang of his own servitude and his coming liberation. In the same way, throughout history, oppressed peoples fighting to break out of the enslavement have created secret signs, codes, and hymns to express their travail, their hopes, and their determination.
When Israel was in Egypt's land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand, let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go. Thus spake the Lord, bold Moses said, let my people go. If not, I'll smite your firstborn dead. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell
We now are going to be blessed with a Passover Jewish folk story by Shirley Bennis.
A local Jew came to Rabbi Akiva Egar Posen on the eve of Passover. Rabbi, I have a ritual question to ask you, he said. Is it permissible to use 4 cups of milk at the Seder instead of 4 cups of wine? Why would you want to substitute milk for wine? Are you, God forbid, sick? Oh, no, Rabbi, I am well, but I can't afford to buy wine. The discerning rabbi then said, I'm sorry. It is forbidden to use a substitute for wine. Reaching a hand into his pocket, he continued, take these 20 rubles and purchase wine. After the Jew left, the Rebbetzin angrily chided her husband. Why did you give him 20 rubles for wine? 2 or 3 rubles would have been sufficient. Don't be angry, the rabbi answered. The fact that this poor man was prepared to drink milk at the Seder is evidence that he also didn't have money to buy meat and perhaps not even fish and matzahs. With the 20 rubles, he will be able to observe the Seder properly.
Thank you, Shirley. I'd now like to introduce Alan Grundy, who is going to read our next slide for us. You'll just have to unmute, Alan.
Let all who are hungry come and eat. Let all who are in want share the hope of Passover. With these words, Jews all over the globe open their homes to one and another to partake in the traditional Passover meal. Whether traditional or secular, conservative, humanist, Orthodox, Reconstructionist, or Reform, Jews around the world in the wondrous redemption of our enslaved ancestor. Passover reflects the most unifying moment in our people's history. The Haggadah demands that we, all Jews, imagine themselves being personally delivered from slavery. We are taught, and you shall explain to your child on that day, it is because of what the Lord did for me when I myself went forth from Egypt. According to the Midrash, every Jew living and yet to be born stood at Sinai, enjoying the ancient pledge made by our forebears in the wilderness of Sinai.
Thank you, Alan.
I don't know.
Halachma ania di achalu ahavatana ba'ar di Mitzrayim. Kol di chvin yete v'yechul. Kol di tzrich yete v'yifsach. Hashata hacha l'shana haba'a ba'ar di Yisrael. Hashata avdei l'shana haba'a b'nei chorin. Here, this is the bread of affliction that our ancestors ate in the land of Egypt, that all who are hungry come and eat, that all who are in need come and celebrate Passover. Now we are here, next year in the land of Israel. Now we are slaves, next year we will be free.
May Elijah the prophet arrive in our time to herald the Messiah, the son of David, Eliyahu Hanavi. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi. Bimhera v'yameinu yavo elenu. Im Mashiach ben David, Im Mashiach ben David. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi.
Ma Nishtana, what is different? Ma Nishtana, known as the 4 questions, are questions traditionally asked at the start of the Passover Seder. Often sung or chanted by the youngest child in attendance, the Ma Nishtana points out 4 anomalies that set apart this night from every other night. Today, we will have a very special time to hear Manishtanah because we are going to hear it chanted in English, Hebrew, and Yiddish, one right after the other. We hope that you find it meaningful.
Why is this night different from all other nights?
מה נשתנה הלילה הזה מכל הלילות?
Was ist die Nacht von Pesach anders von aller Nacht von ein ganzes Jahr?
On all other nights, we eat bread or matzah. Why on this night do we eat only matzah?
שבכל הלילות אנו אוכלים חמץ ומצה, הלילה הזה כולו מצה.
Alle Nacht von ein ganzes Jahr essen wir Chametz oder Matze. Oder die Nacht von Pesach essen wir nur Matze.
On all other nights, we eat any kind of vegetables. Why on this night do we eat bitter ones?
בכל הלילות אנו אוכלים שאר ירקות, הלילה הזה כולו מרור.
Alle Nacht von ein ganzes Jahr essen wir allerlei Grinsen. Aber die Nacht von Pesach essen wir nur bittere Grinsen.
On all other nights, we need not dip one food into another. Why on this night do we do so twice?
שבכל הלילות איננו מטבילין אפילו פעם אחת, הלילה הזה שתי פעמים.
Alle Nacht von ein ganzes Jahr trinken wir nicht ein, a viele einmal nicht. Aber die Nacht von Pesach trinken wir ein, zweimal.
On all other nights, we may sit at the table either upright or reclining. Why on this night do we recline?
שבכל הלילות אנו אוכלים בין יושבים ובין מסובים, הלילה הזה כולנו מסובים.
Alle Nacht von ein ganzes Jahr essen wir sei sitzendig und sei angespart. Aber die Nacht von Pesach essen wir nur angespart.
Now I'd like to introduce Alva Dorkin, who will be reading our next slide. She's looking to unmute, I can tell. She's looking for the button. I can help her a little.
Mute, okay.
There we go. Now you're good.
From the book of Isaiah. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nations shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. But they shall sit, everyone under their vine and their fig tree, and none shall make them afraid.
Thank you, Alva. Next year in Jerusalem, La'ashana ba'aba'a. This familiar phrase in the Haggadah had a specific historical origin. After the destruction of Jerusalem by the Romans, its rebuilding became a common hope among the Jews of that time. Rabbi Akiva expressed this hope that every Jew live long enough to observe Pesach in a free Jerusalem. When the Jews of Akiva's day repeated the story of the Exodus, they said Egypt, but meant Rome, just as the Jews of Poland said Pharaoh and meant Hitler.
Our generation has been witness to tragic as well as dramatic episodes in Jewish history, which give new meaning and symbolism to the phrase, next year in Jerusalem. Because pioneers imbued with the Zionist dream of a Jewish homeland had planned and labored, the new state of Israel was born on May 14, 1948. A young and tiny country, Israel has provided a home for the survivors of the Nazi destruction, has created new and responsible forms of social organization, has created a language and a vital culture, and has welcomed Jews who for many reasons have chosen to live in the Jewish homeland. Israel has instilled a new sense of dignity in Jews throughout the world.
Yet the efforts of the people of Israel and of world Jewry to build a new nation in the Jewish tradition have been clouded by new and pressing problems: a continuing state of war and terror, prolonged rule over unwilling populations, the clash of authentic nationalisms, and assaults on civil liberties and religious pluralism all have sapped the promise of the new state.
On this Passover night, this afternoon, we celebrate Israel's achievements. We are also mindful of the overwhelming problems that persist, and we reaffirm our commitment to help in their constructive solution. As our tradition teaches, ignorance and neglect are forms of bondage. We urge Israelis, Palestinians, and all the people of the region to renounce ignorance and violence so that they can devote themselves to the paths of life and the pursuit of justice. It is with this complex of thoughts that we greet our brothers and sisters in Israel. Next year in Jerusalem, at peace.
Hallelujah.
בשנה הבאה נשב על המרפסת ונספור ציפורים נודדות. ילדים בחופשה ישחקו תופסת בין הבאים לבין השדות. עוד תראה כמה טוב יהיה בשנה הבאה. עוד תראה כמה טוב יהיה בשנה הבאה. ענבים אדומים יבשילו עד הערב ויוגשו צוננים לשולחן, ורוחות רדומים ייסעו עליהם הדרך, עיתונים ישנים בענן. עוד תראה כמה טוב יהיה בשנה הבאה. 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 בשנה הבאה נפרוס כפות ידיים מול האור הניגר הלבן. הנפה לבנה תפרוס באור כנפיים והשמש תזרח בתוכן. עוד תראה כמה טוב יהיה בשנה הבאה. 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 בשנה הבאה. בשנה הבאה.
Chad Gadya, performed by Jewish People's Philharmonic Chorus. Chad Gadya, the popular Aramaic folk song traditionally sung at the conclusion of the Passover Seder. It has many verses. Starting in the 1930s, a shortened 8-quatrain Yiddish paraphrasing of the original was sung at the annual secular Third Seder of the Workmen's Circle, Arbiter Ring. This shortened text, attributed to I. Lukovsky, with a new melody by Michael Gelbart, was used for the choral arrangement performed here.
I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second so I can pull up the right video real quick. So give me 1 second here. Make sure I have everything pulled up because we decided you really need to be able to see the closed captioning because this is really, really cute. So I am going to now share my screen again. And here you go. All right. So I have one more slide to share with everyone. But before I do that, I would be remiss if I didn't thank my helpers for the committee to help put this together. I really, really appreciate Shirley Benyus, who worked tirelessly pulling together so much text for us for this afternoon. Of course, Margaret Winters also helped tremendously, as well as Jeffrey Nathan. So thank you to all three of you. We've been working on this for a bit, and I really, really appreciate it. Of course, I want to thank all of you for joining us. If you hadn't joined us, there wouldn't have been much point of us putting any effort into this. So thank you for being here. We want to wish you all a wonderful, wonderful Passover. Chag Sameach. And with that, I'm going to share one final page. Let us touch hands, even virtually, as we think about the beauty of Pesach, the struggle, the hope, the promise of liberation for all humanity. So thank you all once again for joining us. And we are welcome to unmute and speak to one another. I am going to go ahead and stop the recording at this point. So whatever you say won't be there for posterity. So let me